So I want to shift gears a little bit now, and I want to talk about a way of practicing your meditation so that it can really begin to grow for you aspects of yourself that can start to uproot the tendency to judge in general. We all have a certain amount of bandwidth to our lives. And with this practice I'm going to teach you now, we can kind of crowd out those tendencies to judge and to be mean, both toward ourselves and others. It's like we can use our meditation to really fertilize the ground that grows things like love and compassion. So during the pandemic, I saw an interview with a woman who was a nurse, and she was sharing how she was really getting caught up in judgment toward her friends and family and just society at large for how people were not being smart and compassionate about the spread of COVID, right? And I know a lot of us can relate to this, how people in her life were sneaking out to go to get-togethers and not wearing their masks and not getting vaccinated. And she was feeling like her true path, of being a compassionate person and a nurse was really being thwarted by all the judgment she was feeling, right? Really about almost everyone in her life, so many people, and how painful it was becoming for her to be separated from her practice of compassion. And that's what judgment does, because it's such a knee-jerk power grab, right? It like ends the discussion. It ends the understanding. Because in our judgment, we already know who's right and who's wrong. So because it ends any attempts at understanding, it then stymies compassion, because compassion grows in the soil of understanding. And then the person who was talking with her, her mentor, the mentor asked her what it was that she wanted to be happening in those moments instead of her judgment. And I think that's such a great question. Okay, here's what's happening. Judgment. Judgment is happening. What would I want to be happening in these moments instead? And the woman said that she wanted to feel compassion instead of judgment. And I'll never forget, the mentor said, like quick as lightning, you can't come in right now. Close the door. 5 more minutes. No. Okay, I'm going to stay out of judgment. My little child who just interrupted us. Okay, let me circle back, because this is a really beautiful, beautiful teaching, and I want to get it right. The mentor asked the woman, what did she want to feel instead of the judgment? And the woman said she wanted to feel compassion instead of judgment. And I'll never forget, the mentor said, like quick as lightning, she said, that's the prayer. That's the prayer. What you would want to be happening in those moments instead of the judgment is the prayer. It's the ask. It's what we can ask for help with. It's what we can practice holding in our mind as we meditate. So I sit in judgment of myself or of another or of a situation. And then when I'm not in those moments of judgment, when I'm out of them, when I'm just sitting at home or getting ready to meditate, I can ask myself, what would I want to be happening in those moments? And my answer becomes my prayer. My answer becomes my prayer, my reason for meditating. It becomes my ask and the focus of my meditations. It becomes my inspiration, my motivation. My answer becomes why I meditate in the first place. And it's what I can then hold in my mind and in my heart as I practice. So sometimes we need to ask for help. We don't know everything. We can't do everything. And this is just a core fact of our existence. So listen to this. When we acknowledge this core fact that we don't know everything and that we don't know how to do everything all the time, what this does for us is it starts to bring our meditations into the realm of the sacred. That's what it does. When we acknowledge this core fact that we don't know everything and we don't know how to do everything all the time, what this does for us is it starts to bring our meditations into the realm of the sacred. You can understand the sacred as that which is at the very core of our existence. And that which, when we know it, when we come to know it and understand it, can have deeply transformative effects on our life. That's one way of understanding the sacred, what is meant by the sacred. Let me say that again, because it's so kind of big and so important, and it's not typically something we talk about or we even really understand. You can understand the sacred as that which is at the very core of our existence, and that which, when we know it, when we come to know it and understand it, can have deeply transformative effects on our life, because it brings that which is at the very core of our existence into the light of awareness. One of the truths at the very core of our existence, you're going to get grounded. Close the door. Oh my gosh. I'm going to ground that little sucker. And that's the kid I was all upset about for getting judged. Maybe he deserved it. I'm just kidding. Okay, sorry. Coming back. One of the truths at the very core of our existence, one of the truths at the very core of our existence is that we don't know everything. We can't know everything all the time, and that sometimes we need to ask for help. Now, who it is that you're asking for help from can range, right? Dependent on religious and spiritual beliefs or lack thereof. What I'm describing is asking for help from our meditations, right? And just the act of acknowledging that you don't know everything and that you can't always do everything that you want to do, and that sometimes you need some help with stuff, that's what can start to bring our meditations into the realm of the sacred, because it acknowledges one of the truths at the very core of our existence. It helps us get comfortable with not always knowing, which is actually sacred practice. It's spiritual practice, getting comfortable with not always knowing. Not knowing is nearest sometimes. So it brings us more deeply and fully onto the meditative path, which I know so many of us are looking for. We don't know everything and we can't do everything just yet that we want to be able to do. And the more we acknowledge this, the more comfortable with it we become, the less vulnerable we begin to feel in the face of it. At first, it can make us feel real vulnerable, right? Acknowledging so directly the fact that we don't know everything. That's why we tend to hide from it so much. But it's a truth at the very core of our existence. So getting comfortable with it is one of the ways we have of getting comfortable with life, by bringing ourselves into alignment with life. I've said it before and I'll say it again. When we live out of alignment with life, we experience stress and anxiety. When we move into alignment with life, we experience the reduction of stress and anxiety. That's actually what mindfulness-based stress reduction is. That's what mindfulness-based stress reduction is. It's moving ourselves more and more into alignment with how life actually is. It's bringing the truths of our existence above the line and into awareness. So when the mentor said, that's the prayer, when we get trapped in the snare of judgment, we can later reflect on what we'd want to be happening in those moments instead of the judgment. And we can turn it into our prayer, our ask for our practice. And that's what starts to bring our meditations into the realm of the sacred. So they're not just stress reduction practices anymore. We don't just meditate to reduce our stress, although of course that's still really important. But we now can also meditate to experience the sacred, which is the coming to know and understand more of the truths at the very core of our existence. If you want to be more gracious in those moments of judgment, that's your prayer. That's your sacred meditation. Help me be more gracious. If you want to be more loving and stable, that's your prayer for your meditation. May I be more loving and stable. And as we practice holding that in our minds and in our hearts when we meditate, that's what starts to move our meditations into the realm of the sacred. In the moments that we're caught in the trap of judgment, we do the first practice, naming and feeling. Then when we have time to reflect later and think about how we'd like to show up in our lives for those moments, that becomes our prayer, our sacred meditation. That can be the ask of your spiritual practice, that which we're hoping to cultivate through our meditation. And it becomes our inspiration, our motivation, our fire, our guide. It becomes why we meditate, our prayer. So I'll leave you with this. For me, like the nurse, I wish to show up with compassion in those moments. I wish to show up with less reactivity. I wish to show up with a heart of love and understanding for the person and other people and for myself in those moments instead of the reactivity of blame and judgment. That's my prayer. That's my ask. That's why I meditate every single day. When I bring that prayer into my meditation, it brings my practice into the realm of the sacred. So I'm no longer just meditating to relax and de-stress, although that's really important, but I also meditate because of my prayer. So what is it for you? What is your prayer? In those moments that you get so small and so tight, and you feel judged by others, or you feel judged by yourself, or you're judging others, what would you wish to be appearing, to be arising for yourself in those moments? Just close your eyes for a moment, just a moment, and reflect. In those times that we get so judgy or so small and hurt by the judgment of others, what would you wish to be happening? What would you wish to be arising for you in your heart and in your mind? What is it for you? Get to know it a little bit, get to feel it a little bit. This is your prayer. This is your ask for your meditation, for your spiritual practice. May I be less reactive in those moments. May I be more gracious. May I hold the heart of love and compassion, or whatever it is for you. Let this prayer be the reason that you meditate today, tomorrow, the next day. Let this prayer be why you carve out 10 or 15 or 20 minutes every day to just sit and meditate. Hold this wish, this ask, this prayer in your heart and in your mind as you practice, as you meditate. This will deepen your practice. It will uplift your practice. It will nourish your practice for the long term. I promise you. Okay. I hope so much this session brought you benefit, brings you benefit. So much love to everyone, and I'll see you next time.